Hello, Clickachu here. Utilizing cold damage in a lightning skill? Well, that's exactly what we are gonna do here. Almost every ranger plays Lightning Arrow, which is a current meta. However, there are some different versions of it, and I talked to many players, checked various guides, and tailored this build to my needs, and created my version, which is cheap, strong, and fun to play. You don't need to spend crazy amount of currency, you don't need any crazy items, and you can still easily clear tier 18 maps and do at least some of the endgame bosses, as I haven't done all of them yet. Of course, you need to invest a bit so it feels smooth, but that's the case with all builds when it comes to min-maxing and doing late endgame. I will also show some expensive items for crazy upgrades, but they're totally not required to make a strong character. I also added some item rarity to it because I can't help it and I'm a magic find freak, but it's totally optional, and with this build you can either go into totally normal version as well as into a rarity stacking to see these juicy loot explosions. With this being said, anyone who wants to make a normal strong build or a magic find build can do it with this guide. I was adding item rarity items wisely, in a way, and into the slots that would keep this build strong and that wouldn't transform it into a squishy farmer. That's it for the introduction, let's dive into the guide. In this video I will show gem setups for both clearing and bosses and explain how to use them. The setups are quite similar and it's just a matter of seconds to switch in between them, as nobody likes too much of micromanagement, and I will also provide the attributes and spirit requirements. Then I will show passives and Ascendancy Trees, and then I will show the gear with every important aspect to look for, which means build requirements, some item swaps for bosses, and some of the more expensive gear alternatives that can upgrade your build when you can afford it. And at the end I will also show some gameplay. Let's start with the gem setups. Main skill gem is Lightning Arrow, and I'm using it with Martial Tempo, Primal Armament, and now something not quite obvious for Lightning Arrow skill, Cold Infusion to gain some cold damage. It lowers the lightning damage, but it works really well. Basically, in this setup our Lightning Arrow will deal more cold damage than lightning damage. Next gem is Ice Bite, and the last gem is Heft. Now, the second skill, which is the Lightning Rod. You place it near rare monsters and bosses and then shoot the Lightning Arrow so it chains with it and causes the Lightning Rod to explode with bursts, which deal great damage to single targets, and this tech is also good for harder monster packs in the maps. The support gems are Scatter Shot, Concentrated Effect, Lightning Infusion, Overcharge, which increases the magnitude of shock, which causes monsters to take even more damage from shocks, and Lightning Mastery for +1 to Lightning Rod gem. The next skill is Voltaic Mark. You manually mark single target enemies like rares and bosses before attacking them, which increases the chance of shock and the effect of shock on them. Some players use Voltaic Mark connected to Cast on Freeze to auto-cast it, which is very good for map clear, as Voltaic Mark also causes a Shock Nova to erupt from their corpses. I'm not using this setup in this build, as I prefer to use Voltaic Mark on single targets manually, but this option is worth considering. It strongly depends on your current playstyle, whether you're mapping or clearing bosses. Support gems for the Voltaic Mark are Persistence for increased effect duration, and Arcane Tempo for more cast speed. Now let's discuss the auras. First of all, the minimum spirit to make this build work is 133. 100 from the quests, and I have 33 on the amulet, and I still need to grab one reduced spirit reservation by heralds on my tree with my current amount of spirit. Ideally you want at least 35 spirit on your gear, so you don't need to take these herald reservation points on the tree. It is good to have more, so you can use more support gems with your auras or maybe even additional spirit skill like Cast on Freeze. So the first aura is Wind Dancer for more evasion rating and also to trigger Gale Force when you get hit. The support gems are Clarity for increased mana regen rate, Vitality for life regen, and Cannibalism for life recovery when you kill an enemy. If you have enough spirit, you can also use Precision here. The second aura is Herald of Thunder, and the support gems are Maim, Bullseye, Mana Bounty, and Innervate. If this herald kills any monster, then this lightning damage gain from Innervate will affect all of the attack skills. And if you have 6th socket, then I suggest using Coursing Current. You can change your support gems here. This is not my final setup. Same with the next aura, which is Herald of Ice, supported by Elemental Focus, Magnified Effect, Cold Mastery, and Cold Penetration. We already have a lot of Cold Penetration, but it's always a bit more. And if you have 6 socket, then use Frost Nexus to create some chilled ground. And now the last skill, which is Cast on Shock, and this passive spirit skill is only for bosses, so I manually enable it before entering the boss arena. When I'm using it, I disable Herald of Thunder and Herald of Ice auras in order to meet the spirit requirements. While doing it, I also replace the Herbalism support gem for the Precision support gem in my Wind Dancer aura. The way it works is you will cast Ball Lightning after you shock the enemy. In order to do that, you first manually cast Voltaic Mark on the boss to increase the chance to shock, and then you shoot lightning rods next to him, and then you shoot him with your main lightning arrow skill. This will cast bold lightning orbs into the boss, which will interact with the lightning rods, causing lightning rods to deal massive damage to the boss. After you start casting these balls, you should add more lightning rods and shoot more lightning arrows when you stop to shock. Just to clarify, ball lightning doesn't do any damage itself, it triggers the lightning rod bursts. This skill will consume massive amount of mana, so don't be surprised that you will need to spam your mana flask. Level 11 of Cast on Shock has 95 intelligence requirements, so you should aim at level 11 unless you have more int, so 95 intelligence is the minimum for this build. The support gems are Ball Lightning, Deceleration, so the lightning orbs would go slower so they can interact more times with the lightning rods, Impetus, so the skills gain more energy, and Inspiration, which is very important, so this skill costs less mana. If you have 6 socket unlocked, I would recommend using Energy Retention. Additionally, while attacking bosses, I swap 2 support gems between Lightning Arrow and Lightning Rod. I take Heft from Lightning Arrow and put it to Lightning Rod, and take Lightning Mastery from Lightning Rod and put it to Lightning Arrow. Basically, I just swap these 2 gems in places. The reason for that is that I want to make Lightning Rod stronger, as it is the main damage source while doing bosses with Ball Lightning. And when I go back to mapping, I swap these gems back. As for map clearing, I need more damage on my Lightning Arrow. And now something additional which you don't need and you can totally skip it, but I'm using it, basic bow skill which doesn't consume any mana. This is only for some emergency situations when you're out of mana or when you're doing boss and he has below 5% life, then you can use it to cool him with your basic attack. The support gems are Cooling Strike, Fire Infusion, Fire Penetration, and Venom, and Long Shot. Pretty much random gems except for the Cooling Strike. This is it for the skill and support gems. Of course, you want to level them up as high as you can and add max quality to them. Now the skill tree and jewels. I will not discuss every point on the tree, so it won't take too much time. Let's focus on the most important things. You need movement speed here, as it helps with clear speed as well as with handling bosses and rare monsters. This quiver effect node is extremely strong, it buffs your quiver, and if you have, for example, +2 level to bow skills on your quiver, you will get even more. Then this node for increased elemental damage and increased chance to shock. Critical chance and crit bonus node here is a must-have. Then increased evasion and movement speed. In this cluster, we only want Feathered Fletching for increases and reductions to projectile speed to apply to damage with bows, and this Pierce notable. Then we want these points from this area for increased evasion, dexterity, and increased evasion from equipped armor. We really need a lot of evasion as we will be using acrobatics, which will allow us to evade all hits, but the downside of acrobatics is that it will decrease our evasion by 70%, so we need a lot of it to have a decent chance to evade attacks. Then we need a Herald node, and I also took the reduced Herald reservation point here. You don't need to take this point if you have enough spirit. Next we take this node for increased skill and movement speed. Next we want to go all the way down here to take the lightning rod point, which causes our lightning damage to be lucky. This means that the lightning damage is rolled twice and the better outcome is chosen. Since lightning damage has a very large range, this is extremely strong. Additionally, we grab these nodes for elemental penetration and increased chance to shock, and for increased freeze buildup. Next, we go to the upper section of the tree to grab mental toughness, which greatly helps with mana, which could be one of the main issues when your build is not set up properly. It helps especially with cast on shock ball lightning while doing bosses. Then, this cluster here for some elemental damage, penetration and ailments bonuses. And then the Kite Runner node for increased projectile damage and movement speed. I'm currently at level 93, so I still have 7 more points to get, and when I get them I will probably focus on that pressure points node here for increased freeze buildup. And then I will try to respect one of the points so I can go here or here to get some bonuses from my unique jewel. I will explain these bonuses in the next part, which is the tree jewels. So basically all of the jewels except 2 of them should be the emerald ones with these mods. Increased elemental damage, increased attack speed with bows, and increased projectile damage. These jewels are pretty expensive, so a bit cheaper alternative is to replace the elemental damage stat with lightning damage stat. Additionally, we need 1 sapphire jewel with recover 2% mana on kill, which is super important to sustain mana, and optionally recover life on kill mod, which is also really good. These jewels are expensive right now, so the other stat can be random of course. Try to get something good there while you can. I managed to get cold penetration, which is nice. And now the last jewel, which is quite expensive, and you do not need it to keep your build going, but you really should get it at some point as it's really massive damage increase. This jewel is a unique time lost diamond with gain cold damage. You need the cold damage one in order to shatter the enemies. Single cold damage is better than any other double damage one for this build, of course. Ideally, you want cold and lightning damage one, but the cost is around 120 divines at this moment, which is around half a mirror, so pretty expensive upgrade. I put this jewel here, and that's why I will want to grab some more of the notable points in the future here, or even all of them, as the allocated notables are the sources of damage gain from this jewel. The Ascendancy is a no-brainer. You should first go to the Windward notable to have massive defense from 3% less damage taken per tailwind, and then go to the +1 arrow notable. Important note, don't be greedy for the +1 projectile first. You really need to take the Windward node first for the defenses. This is really a lifesaver for Ranger. And in this notable here, you should choose Point Blank. And now let's discuss the gear and what to look for. You need a decent amount of physical damage on a bow, and other good stats are increased elemental damage with attacks, which is not a local stat on the item but global stats, so you won't see the damage increase directly on a bow, but on a skill tooltip, and it's quite a big one. Some dexterity is always nice, as it's very hard to meet the dex requirements for higher level skills, and the mana gain on kill is something that you must have on a ring, bow or quiver. This is what keeps you going while clearing maps without having some serious mana issues. Ideally, you want an expert dual string bow base for additional arrow, or +1 arrow explicit, or +1 arrow corruption implicit, or in a perfect scenario all of them, which would result in 4 arrows from a bow. I shoot only 2 arrows and it's not optimal, but at least I have some decent base damage. The quiver needs to have top tier added cold damage mod unless you have it on a ring, or preferably you need it on both so you can shatter more. +2 to bow skills is also good as it will be increased by the quiver effect modifiers on the skill tree. Other stats that you need are preferably increased damage with bow skills, added physical damage and mana gain on kill. The body armor is super important and you want at least around 2k of evasion on it, as our skill tree gives 100% increased evasion from equipped body armor. Other stats that you need are of course the resistances, life and when you can afford it, some spirit, but this combo can be quite expensive. Nevertheless, high evasion is the most important thing here. The helmet is a rarity one with 56% rarity on it, and of course some life and additional intelligence and dexterity, which is always good. The attributes in PoE 2 are extremely important and not easy, or let's call it not cheap, to get. The amulet is the item rarity one with 33 spirit, which is the minimum for this build setup, and it also has some resistances, which are always nice and also not easy to cap. The enchant is Essence of the Mountain, which is extremely strong. With this build, you should get it as soon as you can. The price is not too low though. I paid around 3 divines for the distilled emotions that allowed me to get this mod. Ring slots in this build is where you can have some freedom and either add some more damage or more item rarity. Of course, you need resistances, so my first ring is basically to stack as many resistances as possible, and the second ring is the damage ring. I also have another item rarity ring which I can swap with my damage ring in case if I wanna do lower and easier maps for currency farming. Some chaos resistance would be good too. I don't have any yet, and this is one of my most urgent upgrades that I need to do to cap the chaos res, which is super important in PoE 2, much more important than in PoE 1. Now the belt, which is Headhunter. Now, some people would say your build is good because of the Headhunter, but that's not true. Headhunter in PoE 2 is not that strong as in PoE 1. Of course, it greatly helps, especially while clearing breaches, and it also gives a lot of fun, but it's not something that you need to have in order to create a good build. As I mentioned before, I'm level 93 and I just started using this belt at this level. Previously I was using just this cheap belt which was like 10 exalted orbs. The great alternative, especially for bosses or for item swap for bosses, is Ruslata's Coil. It gives you a massive damage increase, it costs a few divines, but it's excellent. Another great alternative is the Ingenuity belt, which increases the effect of rings to up to 80%. Probably this is the best in-slot belt for all magic finders who want to max out their item rarity. My gloves are the item rarity ones with some life, fist damage, resistance and fist damage leached as mana. Leech mod is not strong, but it's always something. A great alternative for the gloves slot is Hand of Wisdom and Action. The damage boost is incredible, but the current cost is around 8 div. The massively increased attack speed can cause mana issues, so it's good to use it with the Thief's Torment ring. These gloves are most likely the biggest damage upgrade that you can get with a single item. Maybe I will also start using them in the future, but they would have to be double socket corrupted ones with double item rarity soul core. The boots are just cheap 30% movement speed and some life, and I was lucky enough to Exalt Slam some nice item rarity on them. Ideally, you want 35% movement speed on the boots. Charm is a golden charm for item rarity, and I have the Recover Life on rare or unique kill and Increased Charges mods on it. The flasks which I found best for my setup are, for the life flask, it's % of the recovery applied instantly and increased charges. With this instant recovery, you can just spam the flask while you're on low life to get instant recovery to full life. For the mana flask, it's increased amount recovered and increased charges. So as you can see, both of the flasks have increased charges, as I think it's much better than increased charges gained, as it allows you to use it more times during the boss fights, where sometimes you just can't get any additional charges during the fight. With this mod, I can use my life flask and mana flask 12 times each, which is more than I need. And of course, you want the ultimate flask bases, which are the best ones. There's also a nice unique life flask, Olroth's Resolve, with 100% instant recovery, but even with the best roll, you can only use it 3 times without refilling the charges, even though it's a best in slot flask, I think. So that's my whole build. I hope that this video will help you to improve your character, and if you have any questions or feedback, feel free to drop a comment below. With this setup, I will now look for more upgrades and adjustments to make it even better and to push my character to level 100. Additionally, here are some clips from Tier 18 map and some other maps and gameplay. I plan to post some more videos soon, map gameplays, additional guides and more, so please consider subscribing to stay updated. Thanks for watching and stay tuned. See you in the next one.